Welcome back to As Promised. Haha. Ha 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 ha. Not me a podcast host. Wow. Um, let's jump right into it. Last week we were talking about thought patterns. We were looking at how they relate to the brain, especially around depression, and whether there is a depressive response that manifests before we can even catch it because we've become familiar or even comfortable with suffering. I can't even remember if I really got into it that deep last week, but those are just my observations. Now, over the start of this week, I'm just going to be honest, I had a little bit of rocky days. My days were rocky, but that's balance. You've got to swing the pendulum back and forth, back and forth. But in the rocky days, I was observing my thoughts. I wanted to know what it was I was thinking that was making me feel discomfort in my body or making me feel restless. I felt restless at the beginning of this week. And I realized in a moment, I was like, oh, I have made my mind the antagonist in my story. I have identified myself with the fact that maybe my mind is out to get me, which doesn't make any sense because your body in all of its iterances, let's call it that, all of its desires is to keep you alive. That is the natural response. So once I had decided, I was like, I can't cast my mind as this antagonist trying to, you know, get to my brain and tell my brain bad things and all these other stuff. I just have to listen and observe it and see what it's saying and then ask it why, or at least offer up a new suggestion as to what I could think. There was a couple of days earlier on this week where I was like, why am I doing this podcast? This is so exposing. Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. What is going on? Like, when did I start this journey? And I sought guidance from people that I absolutely love. And I'm so thankful that I am surrounded by incredible Black men who genuinely just be like, yo, Ronks, you're all right. And I appreciate that so much. Thank you guys so much. But we're back because obviously there's another episode. So, anyway, as I was saying, I had cast my mind as this antagonist and I was listening to what the antagonist was saying. And when I realized that my mind wasn't an antagonist, I was like, oh, okay, there is a dialogue, there's a conversation. If anything, there's a transaction that I can implement here. When my mind starts to doubt anything that is true to my innate nature, I can just offer up a different one. Like this book gives us examples, but I can also just watch it, and then once the narrative has worn itself out, I change it. It sounds really mystical. It sounds really like, how is that possible? But I think the only way in which we can really evolve and continue to grow and elevate and heal is by having awareness, self-awareness, and being diligent about watching internally the way in which your body manifests or creates its responses to the world. Those words are tricky because self-awareness could also lead into hyper-awareness where you feel self-conscious, or and that can manifest insecurities, but that's not the path I'm trying to explore. I guess what I'm trying to offer up is the idea that you can take time. If you hear a thought that is in your mind that creates a sensation in your body that you don't agree with, you can take time around it and be like, okay, I wonder where that came from. I wonder why I think that. Is it something that has happened in the past that is trying to manifest itself in the present, trying to manifest itself? English, wow. Is it a new thought? Is it a feeling that I felt? All of these different questions that, as an artist, as a storyteller, if you're listening, that we would ask our characters that we create for our projects, we could also ask ourselves. We also are have character. We also are a character in that sense. And we've been cast in other people's lives. We've been cast in our own life and on our own story. So there has to be a certain amount of, character work. Internal character work. Yes, that's the first thought. of the podcast. So going back into the book, it says, we are not saying that all the alternative beliefs work all the time. You must be flexible. The nasty trick of the depressed response is that it paints everything with the same brush. You feel helpless about repairing your car's transmission, who wouldn't? But also getting out of bed to face the day is a sign of depression. To become flexible, you must beat the depressed response at its own game. I think this is what I was trying to say. Do you know what I mean? In the first 4 or 5 minutes. Gotta be so diligent. You gotta be so ready. Okay, so it says, how do you do that? If your automatic reaction is associated with sadness, helplessness, and hopelessness, refuse to accept it. Give yourself a moment. Boom. That's number one. Take a deep breath. Number two. And refer to our list of alternative responses. Well, that's number three. You'd have to have the book on you at all times to do that. But my option, I'd say give yourself a moment, take a deep breath, and observe. Watch. Watch the thought. Watch what is happening. Listen to yourself, listen to your body, and then choose a different thought or choose a different response or go, I don't know if that's going to serve me. Yeah, I'm not going to, do you know what I mean? Face a different direction. Okay. It says, this is the book. It says, this takes time and effort, but it will pay off. Learning a new response forms new neural pathways in the brain. It also opens doors. I think that's amazing. I mean, everything takes time and effort. Everything. Change is slow and gradual is a progression. Like it take, I think we exist in a time of instant gratification, partially because of social media and the way in which life has moved forward. We want things instantly. We want them yesterday, in fact, if not 10 years ago. We just want, which goes into consumerism. It goes into capitalism. It goes into this idea of staying and wanting more and more. I've got to have this, I've got to have that, got to have the big yard, got to have the big car, got to have the big color, got to have I got to have this. Do you know what I mean? Like, and none of that actually acknowledges what is going on internally. If there is a constant, I got to have this, I got to have that, I got to have this, an external drive that doesn't get you to a place of peace, you're always going to be wanting. And I know this is actually known information. Everybody knows that, but it's very hard to practice it. It's very hard to acknowledge the things that you wanted 5 years ago, you've probably achieved and surpassed it. But because you're still wanting something that is not what your life is, you don't even see the magicalness in just being alive, the sacredness of just being alive. Time and effort, we have those two. It also opens doors. What kind of doors? When you are depressed, you tend to be isolated, lonely, inactive, passive, and closed to change. The new doors have exactly the opposite effect. By introducing a new response, you resist the temptation to fall back on old, stale beliefs. Instead of being isolated, you realize other people are good for you. Yes, I underlined other people are good for you because sometimes I like to forget. I'm very good by myself. I love being alone. So I have to remember that other people are good for me. I'm fascinated by humans. Just sometimes I don't like spending time with them. Instead of being passive, you see that taking charge is also good for you. This is why I say never let anyone take you for idiot. Never let any situation take you for idiot. Presence, not passive. Oh, I wrote as a side note, a tendency to do nothing is to remain unchanged. Remaining unchanged is stagnation. I speak about stagnation a lot because I feel like we think there's safety in being still, or we think there's safety in not causing waves, in being quiet, in being silent in our suffering. But that doesn't serve the art. It doesn't serve the artist either. I actually then found out this note is just the definition of inertia. Being resistant to change will bring you more suffering in the long run because change is inevitable. I say there are three things in this life that are absolutely fact that you cannot avoid: death, change, and bills. Bills come every month, they don't play. But yeah, there are certain things that you can't avoid. And in avoiding them or trying to avoid them, you cause yourself so much more suffering in the long run. Being open to change, allowing change to flow through you, allowing yourself to be flowable, fluid, creates a space of, yes, uncertainty, but also spontaneity, improvisation, things you didn't know before, learning, experience, wonder, awesomeness, being able to be in awe of things that you didn't recognize. There is so much gifting in change and being willing to change or being open enough to change. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you look back on what it is you're changing as a negative. Oh, yeah, that was the bad version of me. Or yeah, that was this when I had it's all growth, it's all learning. It's all a part of the understanding of self in the meta, billions of us that are on this planet. And then that gets down to, how do you then be of service? How do you then serve self and others, right? Okay. Another strategy is to break down the depressed response, which feels so overwhelming, into manageable pieces. The best tactic is to take one step at a time, choosing a piece you feel ready to handle. One step at a time, slow and gradual. We can't do it all at once, do it overnight. Like I said, I had a couple of rocky days at the beginning of this week and I just observed my thoughts. That was all I could do. I didn't blame myself for having rocky days. I didn't dive into the feelings that I was feeling and being like, this is not da, da, da. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, okay, I wonder what's going on here. What narrative am I creating for myself and relaying to my brain? It says pushing yourself over the smallest hump urges the brain to give up an old pattern for a new one. You are actually expanding your awareness when you let in fresh impulses from the source. Ooh, which is the real you. Come on, bars. We like it. We like it. Let me read it again. Pushing yourself over the smallest hump urges the brain to give up an old pattern for a new one. You are actually expanding your awareness when you let in fresh impulses from the source, which is the real you. Which is the real you. Wow. Behind the mask of depression, which is a behavior tied to a fixed response, lies the core self that can direct the healing process. To put it simply, you alone have the power to create healing. You alone have the power to create healing. Depression creates the illusion that all your power has been stripped away. That all your power has been stripped away. Once you find an opening, in truth, you can reclaim the real you. You can reclaim the real you. Step by step. Step by step, bit by bit. Ooh, bit by bit. So what I was saying before about being familiar with your suffering, this is what I was trying to allude to. The book does it a lot better than I do. Hey Siri, what song is Depression also has an addictive side, in which sadness and hopelessness take charge. No, thank you. Damn, I can't be any other way. Is the common cry of both the addict and the habitually depressed. So this is what I was trying to allude to. In many cases, when I said that a good me and a bad me are warring against each other. For the alcoholic, the bad me drinks while the good me is sober. For the depressed person, the bad me is sad and hopeless while the good me is happy and optimistic. But in truth, depression casts its shadow over everything. The best moments are merely a prelude to a relapse. The bad me is going to win in the end. The good me is merely its pawn. That's heavy. I just want to say real quick, that's heavy as a belief and a thought pattern. And this is why these episodes exist. Because if your mind is telling your brain this, I wish to gift you relief. You're not to blame. Like I said in the first episode, none of it is your fault. There are external factors, internal factors, triggers, just the things, overstimulation, the things we have access to. Your depression response or being depressed or having depression is not your fault. You're not to blame. Let's alleviate that from the jump. Going back to the book, because it's going to say what I want to say, but in a better way. The war is unwinnable. Every victory is only temporary, and the pendulums keep swinging back and forth. When a war is unwinnable, why fight? The secret to beating any fixed habit is to stop fighting with yourself, to find a place inside that isn't at war. In spiritual terms, that place is the true self. And meditation opens the way to reaching it. The world's wisdom tradition affirms that no one can be denied peace, calm, silence, the fullness of joy, and reverence for life. When people frown and tell me that they don't believe in meditation, my response is that they must not believe in the brain, because 4 decades of brain research has proven that the brain is transformed by meditation, and now newer evidence suggests that genetic output also improves with meditation. That is, the right genes get switched on and the wrong ones get switched off. To challenge the depressed response, it's not sufficient to simply go inward. You must activate your real self and bring it into the world. Until you can prove the usefulness of new responses and beliefs, the old one will keep a foothold in your consciousness. You are very used to them, and they know the quickest way to return. Therefore, breaking the habit of depression involves doing a combination of inner work and outer work. Let's unpick this war of self. So this is when I said at the beginning of this episode, I had realized at the beginning of this week that I was like, I've cast my brain as the antagonist in my story, in what I believe is my story anyway. And that creates opposition. It creates an enemy. It creates something that you have to fight against. Whereas what I've started thinking about or meditating on is that all of yourself, every single part of your body, its only desire is to keep you alive. It wants to prolong your time on this plane. So having this idea that there is desires that can cause you harm, and there is a voice that out is in your brain that wants to cause you harm, or there are external factors that want to cause you harm, or the list grows and is endless, actually creates a place of uncertainty, restlessness, fear within the body and the mind's landscape. There you are, your real self, as this book likes to refer to, the inner idea, the inner watcher, the inner desire that is to prolong life, is all encompassing with that bad self, the good self, the balance of it all. There's never just going to be a period of your time on this planet, or in this realm, I should say, where you're just like, I am at peace. I don't think so anyway. But one thing that you can acknowledge is watching the swing, the pendulum, and be like, oh, this is where I feel today. Okay, I wonder what thoughts I thought to manifest that. Not judging it, not saying to yourself, oh, damn, I flopped my neural pathway. I'm thinking bad thoughts, or I'm thinking negative thoughts. Oh, shit, I hit the depressed response. Even just yesterday, I not kicked off, but I had an edge to me a couple times. Do you know what I mean? There are things that you might not be able to catch before it lands, but once you have awareness around it, once you start being aware of the thought patterns, you can observe them and hopefully acknowledge that there's still work to be done, either in hindsight, insight, wink, wink, or foresight. that person might piss me off. Okay, this is what I'm going to need to do before I go into that person's presence. I'm going to need to meditate. I'm going to need to affirm myself. I'm going to need to say nice things to myself on purpose in order to enter that space on a high vibration. Like, there cannot be a war of self. There cannot be an idea of self that is out to get you. There was one thing that I learned in when I was on the meditation course, meditation boot camp, which is heaven and hell is created on the inside. You are everything and nothing at the same time. And what we do is, I feel like from my personal experience, we replay the moments that caused us pain, the moments that caused us sadness, the moments that we flopped other people, that other people have flopped us. We replay these moments in our head like vignettes, movies, just to remind ourselves that we ain't shit. But that's not true. You are everything. Done been everything. And I actually think it's external societal pressures, especially being on this particular continent. Island. Is the UK continent? I don't know. Guys, listen, I only know certain things. I don't know lots of other things as well. On this island is that, the Englishness of being extremely apologetic or very, very self, um, what's that word? I'm going to say self-defeating. I want to say self-deprecating. I don't know what that word is. Like how this idea of extreme humility, this idea of not being able to praise yourself or acknowledge that, hey, you did good, actually does feed into the neural pathways of how we think about ourselves. This is why I say it's not your fault. I also want to examine this idea of good and bad. There is no good, there is no bad. There just is. There just is. The only issue is if it manifests in your life where you don't feel like you can move, shift, push on, pull back, like literally move something, then there's stagnation, and stagnation, therefore, it pollutes the art. It demeans the art. It demeans you as an artist, you as a human being. Your art won't be able to flow. You won't be able to do that which you are called to do, which is to serve self and serve others through your art. And if you're not an artist, through the work that you do, if you don't understand your innate necessity to this world. Anyway, that's my ramble. Next section. So in work, here are some options to change what you think and feel. Meditation. I'm not going to keep going in on this. You know how I feel. Examining your negative beliefs. This is what I tried to do when I had those rocky days, observing it. Reject self defeating reactions to life challenges. I feel a bit conflicted around that word reject because I feel like it denies a part of yourself that is actually just true. Rather than rejecting, I guess transform, redirect, acknowledge, and then alchemize, if that's a word, as opposed to reject self defeating reactions. It's not everything in this book that I completely agree with, but everyone's allowed to do what they want. Um, Learn new responses that are life enhancing, adopt a higher vision of your life and live by it. I have to give you an example in regards to that one. So when I was having my funky days, I just looked around my room and was like, my room's a mess. How? I just cleaned it the other day. And part of me didn't want to get up and clean it, but I was just like, stop being childish. Just clean your room. It helps my mental landscape. And of course, I cleaned it and it did. So adopting a higher vision of your life and living by it, I think that also goes into like, how would you treat your best friend, or how would you want your best friend to live? How would you want them to see themselves? That has to go into how you want yourself to live. Treat yourself like your best friend. See yourself as your best friend. Next one, recognize self-judgment and reject it. Again, we just spoke about that reject word. Transform it, alchemize it, do something else with it. But recognize when you are self-judging or telling yourself things that are not true to your higher vision of yourself. Stop believing that fear is okay because it's powerful. It's big facts. Fear is an invisible entity. Just because it has physical sensations, manifestations in this reality, doesn't make it real, and it doesn't make it okay. There is nothing to be afraid of. There is nothing that can cause you harm. The only things that will cause you harm are that which you inflict on yourself. That is it. Last one, don't mistake moods for reality. Feelings are not facts. I try and tell myself that all the time. Feelings are not facts. I still fail at that one, I can't lie. Sometimes I get in my feelings, but I have to remember they're not facts. Outward work and changing your behavior on the outside, things that you can do externally, reducing stressful conditions. I mean, this is very difficult if you're an artist, but this is why meditation also helps. You can meditate anywhere, anytime, especially if you know you're about to meet that colleague that rubs you up the wrong way. Reduce that stressful condition on yourself. If that doesn't work, find fulfilling work. Find another place where you feel fulfilled, seen, heard, cared for. I know, particularly our industry as storytellers, that can be difficult to come by. It feels like you're working against the fulfillment because it is costly, it is a sacrifice. But to be able to tell stories, to be able to be a vessel of immortalization, the sacred art of storytelling is very fulfilling. So try and do it as safely as possible. It says, don't associate with people who increase your depression. Misery loves company. We all know that one. Find people who are close to who you want to be. Wow. Surround yourself with people that have the higher vision of themselves, that have a higher vision of you, I think is really important. They want to hold you to account. It's difficult. It's a challenge. Yeah. It's light work, as we tell ourselves in our brain. But that's why it's important to keep people around you that will make sure they challenge you, or maybe even like tell you, bro, if you can't keep up, you might have to go. It's a big ultimatum still, but it might help. Um, Learn to give of yourself. Be generous of spirit. Speaks for itself. I guess this is also what this podcast is supposed to be. I love talking to people. I love exploring the mental landscape of that which we do as artists. This does make me feel super self-conscious, but it's light work because I'm trying to be generous of spirit, and knowledge kept to self is no knowledge at all. We have to share it in order for it to actually have currency. And I know a lot of people might not care about neuroscience, or they might not care about the sacredness of art, but those of us that do, we're right here, we're pulling up. And even if this just reaches one person and it gives them relief from depression or pressure of the art, then I feel like I've served, which is a great feeling to have. It's fulfilling. It's a fulfilling feeling to have. Adopt good sleep habits and exercise lightly once a day. I'm still learning, evolving around this and making sure my sleep habits get better. It's strange because I can work on like 4 hours sleep, but I'm aware that this will come in tandem with my brain and encouraging my brain and my mind, which is not my antagonist, to tell my brain good things in order to create great, strong, wonderful neural pathways. Focus on relationships instead of distractions and endless consumerism. This is why I say I find social media quite difficult. If we meet in real life and have a connection, absolutely, I'm more than happy to like have a connection with you on this online platform. However, I have a lot of connections. I love people. I love meeting people. I love talking to people. So sometimes it's weird. It's actually, a challenge to try and keep up with everyone and see everyone that you love and give the amount of time, especially if you have burnout and not great sleeping habits like I do. So this is also a way in which I try and connect with the people that I love and hopefully the people that love me. So yeah, there's that. And also just switching off your phone, coming off social media, giving yourself that digital detox. Those are also important because our brains are constantly stimulated. We're constantly gaining new information, new information. Even this podcast is why I said in the last episode, if you need to take breaks, take breaks. Like, there's always information coming. So sometimes just switch off. Don't even listen to me if you don't want to. Turn this off right now. Last one. Learn to reparent yourself by finding mature, emotionally healthy people who can love, who are accepting, and who do not pass judgment. Growth, learning, being a student, being enthusiastic, being open to learning, being open to change will only elevate your art. It will only create subtlety in your art. It will only create real authenticity, real, let's call it finesse, pizzazz in your art. Because what we do is we reflect each other as artists. So these are things that you can do on the outside, external stuff, and then prior was internal stuff that you could do. And I hope this helps. If it helps you, send it to someone else. If you want to keep it to yourself, keep it to yourself. If you want to challenge me, challenge me. If you want to deny and sack it off and be like, Ronks don't know what she's talking about, that's okay too. Wherever you are in your journey, whether you're an artist or just another incredible, very special human being, I hope that we can really become best friends with our minds, only speak that which serves us and serves self, and find a clearer communication with our real self, as this book likes to explore. Being in alignment to the source of life, the source of art, the source of fulfillment. I am not a spiritual leader. I'm not trying to be. I guess I just leave these here because I know sometimes I forget. So it's a catalogue of reminders, these episodes, things that you can do internally and externally to elongate your art and immortalize humanness. Thank you for listening. These podcasts are starting to sound like meditate, meditate, meditate. Big tune. That's a Kendrick Lamar song. Who knows it? The words are actually levitate, levitate, levitate. If you know it, put it in the comment box and I'll know you're a real one. Thank you for listening. Have a great week. See you next week, babe.